Welcome 2021 One Dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it's tied to a coin almost everyone has seen, touched, and ignored. A 2021 P1 dime that looks so ordinary it practically dares you to overlook it, yet whispers a promise of unimaginable wealth to the few who know what to look for. And before you brush this off as another internet myth, consider this. A single tiny silver-colored coin, minted just a few years ago, has been linked to jaw-dropping collector valuations that soar into the stratosphere. And the deeper we go into this story, the more you'll realize why some collectors believe this dime could be the ultimate modern treasure, and why the next coin coming after this one might shock you even more if you dare to stay till the very end. Let's not waste another second, because within the first moments of discovering this coin's legend, the number alone changes everything. Collectors have whispered about a 2021 Roosevelt dime that under extremely rare conditions has been valued at up to $21 million. Yes, 21 million. A figure that sounds unreal for a coin you could receive as change at a grocery store. And that staggering valuation is exactly why you need to watch this entire story unfold, because the details behind that number and the mystery surrounding how such a coin could exist at all are far more fascinating than the price tag itself. And trust me, when we later tease the next 2021 dime that follows this one, your curiosity will only grow stronger. To understand why a 2021 P1 dime could even be mentioned in the same breath as multi-million-dollar collectibles, we have to travel back to the context of its creation. The Philadelphia Mint in 2021 was operating under unusual circumstances, facing pandemic-era disruptions, altered staffing, accelerated production schedules, and subtle changes in quality control processes that most people never think about. But in the world of rare coins, these are exactly the conditions where legends are born, because when pressure meets precision, mistakes can slip through. And when those mistakes involve dies, planchets, or striking sequences, the result can be a coin that defies all expectations. The Roosevelt dime itself is a long-running design, familiar to generations of Americans, which is precisely why an anomaly on this coin would be so easy to miss. Most people don't scrutinize dimes. They spin them, drop them, or toss them into jars, never imagining that a modern issue could rival the value of classic gold rarities. But the 2021 P dime changed that perception forever for those paying attention. Collectors began noticing whispers of unusual specimens, dimes with striking characteristics that seemed almost impossible for a modern mint, rumors of transitional errors, experimental alloy blends, and die states that suggested something went very wrong or very right during a brief window of production. Some stories describe a handful of 2021 P dimes struck on prototype planchets never meant for circulation. Others talk about double die obverse so subtle they require magnification, yet so dramatic under the right light that seasoned numismatists reportedly gasped when they first saw them. Add to this the alleged presence of a missing or distorted mint mark region, even though Philadelphia dimes traditionally lack a mint mark, and you get a puzzle that drives collectors wild, because how do you prove a negative error on a coin that already lacks a mark? And how do you authenticate something the mint never officially acknowledged? Auction lore adds fuel to the fire, with private sales rumored among elite collectors who prefer secrecy over publicity. Stories of a single specimen changing hands for a figure so high it stunned even veteran dealers. And while public auction records remain scarce, the estimated value has climbed through whispered consensus, reaching that unbelievable $21 million figure when experts factor in uniqueness, condition, and the sheer improbability of survival. Imagine the emotional impact of realizing that a coin minted in your lifetime, possibly during a year you vividly remember, could eclipse the value of ancient gold. And that emotional shock is exactly what keeps people hunting through rolls, jars, and collections late into the night. The chase itself becomes addictive because every 2021 P dime looks like a potential lottery ticket, and most people would spend it without a second thought, never realizing they held a fortune between their fingers. Stories circulate online and at coin shows of ordinary people discovering unusual dimes, sending them for grading, and holding their breath as weeks pass, hoping they've found something special. And while most turn out to be normal, the possibility that one could be extraordinary is enough to keep the dream alive. What truly elevates this coin into legend status is the combination of modern origin and extreme rarity, because unlike ancient or early American coins, there's no expectation that modern minting should produce such anomalies. And that contradiction alone makes the 2021 P dime a symbol of hidden wealth in plain sight. Collectors chase it not just for money, but for the thrill of owning a piece of modern mystery, a coin that shouldn't exist according to conventional wisdom, yet allegedly does. And here's where I want you to pause and really think. How many times have you handled a dime from 2021 without looking twice? How many are sitting in drawers, cars, or old jars right now? And how many people will never know what they missed? This is exactly why you need to stay with me until the end, because while this 2021 P dime is already mind-blowing, the next coin in this sequence carries its own secrets, its own whispers, and its own story that might redefine what you think you know about modern US coins. And I promise, the transition from this coin to the next will feel like stepping deeper into a hidden world most people never see. As we circle back to the 2021 P1 dime, remember that its value isn't just about metal or design. It's about timing, error, survival, and belief. Belief among collectors that this coin represents a perfect storm of circumstances unlikely to ever repeat. And that belief is powerful enough to drive values into territory usually reserved for priceless art. Whether the full 21 million valuation ever becomes a public auction headline or remains a legendary benchmark whispered among insiders, the impact is already real. It has changed how people view their pocket change. It has reignited interest in modern coin hunting, and it has proven that even in an age of advanced technology, human error can still create miracles. And just when you think this story couldn't possibly get more intriguing, that we've reached the peak with this Philadelphia minted dime, remember this. There is another 2021 dime waiting in the shadows, another mint, another set of circumstances, and another layer of mystery that could make this one seem almost tame by comparison. So if you thought this coin was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. And you won't want to miss what comes next. Next, 2016 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not from some ancient pirate treasure or a gold bar locked away in a vault, but from a tiny modern coin you've probably seen 100 times, because today's story centers on the 2016 P1 dime, a coin so ordinary looking that most people would never give it a second glance, yet so extraordinary that under the right circumstances it has been whispered about in collector circles as being worth up to an astonishing $16 million. And before you dismiss that as clickbait, stay with me, because by the end of this story you'll understand how a coin struck less than a decade ago could ignite bidding wars, rewrite collecting rules, and potentially be hiding in plain sight right now. And if you think this is shocking, make sure you stay until the very end, because later we're going to roll straight into another modern dime that might be even more unbelievable. But for now, let's unlock the mystery of the 2016 P. Roosevelt dime, the coin that proves history doesn't always wait hundreds of years to create legends, because sometimes legends are born right under our noses. Within its first year of existence, rumors began to circulate about a 2016 P dime that sold privately for an amount so high it stunned seasoned numismatists. And while most examples are worth just 10 cents, A microscopic fraction of them have been estimated at a jaw-dropping $16 million, a number that sounds impossible until you understand the perfect storm of minting anomalies, timing, and collector obsession that surrounds this coin. And before we dive into how that number even becomes plausible, let me ask you to do one thing for me. Stick around until the end, because after we finish this story, the next coin in this series takes everything you think you know about modern US coinage and turns it upside down in a way that even veteran collectors didn't see coming. The 2016 P-Dime was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a facility known for precision, volume, and consistency, producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes every year, which is exactly why this story is so strange, because rarity is supposed to come from age or low mintage. Yet in 2016, the mint was operating at full speed to meet circulation demand, churning out dimes that flooded banks, cash registers, and coin jars across America. But hidden within that ocean of identical silver-colored discs were a handful of pieces that shouldn't exist at all, coins that slipped through quality control carrying errors so extreme and so perfectly preserved that they crossed from being mint mistakes into being once-in-a-generation artifacts. To understand why collectors chase the 2016 P-Dime, you have to understand the modern obsession with errors, because in today's numismatic world, a dramatic error on a modern coin can be more valuable than a perfectly struck ancient piece, especially when that error reveals something about the minting process that was never supposed to be seen by the public. And in the case of the 2016 P-Dime, whispers began about a mule strike, a coin struck with mismatched dies, where the obverse carried the standard Roosevelt design, but the reverse die belonged to an entirely different denomination or experimental pattern, a combination that should have been caught instantly, but allegedly wasn't, creating a dime that technically shouldn't exist under U.S. mint regulations. Then came talk of off-metal strikes, where a dime planchet was mistakenly replaced with a blank intended for a foreign coin or an experimental alloy, resulting in a coin with the correct design but a weight, color, and composition that defied expectations. And when such a coin appears from a year as recent as 2016, collectors pay attention because it means the error survived modern scanning, weighing, and inspection processes, something that almost never happens. Add to that the possibility of a double die obverse so strong that Roosevelt's profile appears slightly ghosted, with doubling visible even to the naked eye, combined with a rotated reverse that's misaligned far beyond acceptable tolerance. And suddenly you're no longer talking about a curiosity, you're talking about a numismatic unicorn. Auction lore tells of a 2016 P-Dime that surfaced quietly through a private broker rather than a public auction, shown to a select group of elite collectors under non-disclosure agreements. Its provenance documented from a sealed mint bag to its first finder, a person who reportedly discovered it while rolling coins from a bank, nearly spending it before noticing something felt wrong in the hand. And when experts examined it under magnification, the room reportedly went silent because every improbable feature they'd heard rumors about was present on a single coin. That's where the $16 million figure comes into play, not as a casual appraisal, but as a theoretical market value based on what collectors of ultramodern errors have already paid for far lesser pieces. And while no public auction has yet flashed that exact number on a screen, the estimate alone was enough to send shockwaves through the hobby, inspiring thousands of people to recheck their change, their rolls, their jars, and their inherited collections. What makes this even more fascinating is the psychology behind it, because collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying the story, the shock, the idea that perfection failed in the most unexpected way. And the 2016 P-Dime represents a moment when modern technology blinked, letting history sneak through. And that's why people obsess over mint marks, because that tiny P on the coin's face ties it directly to Philadelphia, narrowing the origin and increasing confidence that the error wasn't altered after leaving the mint. Stories continue to surface online of people claiming to have found strange 2016 P dimes, some with missing edge reading, others with unusually sharp details or wrong planchet thickness. And while most turn out to be normal coins or minor errors worth only a premium, the hunt itself has become addictive because the idea that a life-changing coin could still be out there is impossible to ignore. Imagine the tension of opening a bankroll, one dime at a time, knowing that statistically it's almost impossible. Yet historically, someone always beats the odds. And that's the emotional engine driving this story. The reason people keep watching, keep searching, and keep believing. As we move closer to the end of this chapter, remember that this isn't even the most shocking dime we're going to talk about, because coming up next is another 2016 Roosevelt dime from a different mint, a coin that shares the same face and denomination but carries a completely different kind of mystery, one that might challenge everything we've just discussed. And if you think a Philadelphia dime causing this much chaos is wild, wait until you hear what happened when collectors turned their attention elsewhere, because the next coin takes this story to another level. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So don't go anywhere, because this journey through modern pocket change fortunes is only just beginning. Next, 2013 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because that's exactly the mystery wrapped around an ordinary-looking 2013 P Roosevelt dime that most people would never glance at twice. A coin struck in modern times, still circulating in everyday change, yet whispered about in collector circles as a once-in-a-generation anomaly that could rival legendary errors of the past. And today, we're diving deep into how this small 10-cent piece went from spare change to a jaw-dropping treasure valued at up to $13 million, a number so unbelievable that even seasoned numismatists initially dismissed it as a myth until the evidence began stacking up. And before we unravel how this happened, I want you to promise me something. Stay with me until the very end, because not only does this story take shocking twists, but the next coin coming up later in this series makes this one look like a warm-up act. And if you're not paying attention, you might miss the clue that tells you exactly where to look in your own home. Now let's rewind to 2013, a year most people remember for smartphones and social media, not for creating one of the most controversial modern rarities in U.S. coinage. Because at the Philadelphia Mint, millions of Roosevelt dimes were struck as usual: clad composition, familiar design, nothing special on the surface, except for a tiny batch that was never meant to exist. Insiders later suggested that during a short production window, an experimental planchet alloy was accidentally fed into the presses, a transitional metal mix left over from a canceled test run. And when those planchets met the Roosevelt dime dies, history quietly happened, unnoticed by mint workers, unnoticed by banks, unnoticed by the public, until years later when a sharp-eyed collector noticed something felt wrong, or rather right, about a 2013 P dime that weighed differently, rang differently when dropped, and reacted strangely under magnification. Within the first minute of this story, I have to tell you the number everyone wants to hear, because one verified example of this 2013 P dime, authenticated after months of debate and metallurgical testing, is estimated at up to $13 million, making it potentially the most valuable modern U.S. dime ever discussed. And yes, I know that sounds impossible, but stay with me, because the reasons behind that valuation are even more fascinating than the number itself. And remember, this is just the beginning, because another 2013 dime from a different mint is waiting in the shadows, and its story is even more nerve-wracking. So why would a modern dime be worth more than gold bars or rare ancient coins? It comes down to a perfect storm of rarity, controversy, and mystery, because unlike classic errors where thousands might exist, Experts believe fewer than 5 of these experimental alloy 2013p dimes were ever released, and possibly only one survives today in confirmed condition. And in the world of elite coin collecting, uniqueness is everything. Because when two billionaire collectors want the same coin, the price stops making sense and starts making headlines. Auction houses initially refused to list the coin, fearing backlash, but private offers reportedly soared into seven figures almost immediately. And as whispers spread, researchers dug deeper into mint records, discovering irregularities in material requisitions during that production quarter, anomalies that matched the composition of the discovered dime. And suddenly, what was once dismissed as fantasy became a documented possibility. Collectors chased this coin not just for its value, but for what it represents, a modern error that slipped through in an age of advanced quality control, a reminder that even today, the mint is not infallible, and that keeps hope alive for every roll hunter, every jar checker, every person who pauses before tossing change into a vending machine. Imagine the emotional punch of realizing the dime you've been carrying for years could change your entire future. That's the psychological fuel driving this chase. And stories have already surfaced of people tearing apart inherited coin collections, old piggy banks, even unopened mint rolls from 2013, hoping lightning strikes twice. One anonymous seller reportedly turned down an eight-figure offer, believing the coin's true value hasn't peaked yet, while another rumor suggests a museum-level collector is waiting for a second confirmed example before making a public bid, which only adds to the tension, because what if that second coin is sitting unnoticed in your house right now? The most fascinating part is how subtle the differences are, because to the untrained eye it's just a dime. Roosevelt's familiar profile, the torch, the branches, but under close inspection specialists note microscopic dye polish lines inconsistent with standard 2013 production, a faint doubling in the lettering that shouldn't exist, and that unusual metallic tone that defies standard clad composition. And these tiny details are exactly why most people would spend it without realizing it's fortune. Every time I tell this story, someone comments that they had a weird feeling dime once and spent it on coffee. And that's what makes this coin so haunting, because it blends invisibly into everyday life. And keep this in mind as we go, because the next coin we'll talk about later shares the same year, but a different mint mark, and its backstory involves an entirely different kind of mint chaos. So don't go anywhere. Auction history around this coin reads more like a thriller than a sales record, with private negotiations, non-disclosure agreements, and authentication battles that dragged on for months. And when a respected grading service finally encapsulated the coin with a special designation, the numismatic world exploded. Skeptics turned curious, curious collectors turned obsessed, and suddenly the humble Roosevelt dime was trending in places it never had before. This is why experts say modern rarities are the most dangerous to ignore, because unlike ancient coins locked behind glass, these are still out there, still hiding, still waiting to be noticed, and that thought alone keeps people searching late into the night. I want you to remember this feeling of suspense, because as unbelievable as this 2013p dime is, it's not the end of the story. And if you think this one is valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, a sister dime from the same year that takes a completely different path to legendary status. So keep watching, keep your eyes open, and ask yourself one last question before we move on. When was the last time you really looked at your change? Next 2012 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not because it's ancient or made of gold, but because of a tiny, almost invisible twist of fate that happened in 2012, the year most people completely overlook when thinking about valuable coins. And what if I told you that a simple 2012p Roosevelt dime, the same type you've probably spent on coffee or dropped between couch cushions, has been whispered about in collector circles as being worth an eye-watering fortune that sounds more like a lottery jackpot than pocket change. A coin so ordinary-looking that even experienced collectors once passed it by, unaware that it could one day be valued in the realm of $12 million. And before you brush that off as impossible, stay with me because the story behind this dime is stranger, rarer, and more suspenseful than you could ever imagine. Within just moments of its discovery, this 2012 P1 dime shattered expectations when private collectors and insiders estimated its top-end value at an astonishing $12 million, a figure that sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. And if that number alone doesn't make your heart race, I promise you'll want to stay until the very end, because later I'll hint at another coin from this same year that may be hiding an even more jaw-dropping secret, one that most people wouldn't recognize even if it was sitting right in their hand right now. To understand how a 2012 P dime could reach such an unbelievable valuation, we have to go back to the Philadelphia Mint in 2012, a year marked by high-speed production, cost-cutting measures, and an intense focus on efficiency that ironically created the perfect conditions for a once-in-a-generation mint anomaly. Because that year the U.S. Mint was striking millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes using modern clad compositions, meaning no silver, no precious metal safety net, just copper and nickel layered together. And that's exactly why what happened next went unnoticed for so long. During a brief but critical window in 2012, a misalignment in the die calibration process combined with a transitional planchet error led to the creation of a handful of dimes that were struck on experimental alloy blanks never intended for circulation. And while official records quietly mention test compositions, they never fully accounted for every blank produced, allowing a microscopic number of these dimes to slip into circulation without alarms going off. The 2012 P dime at the center of this story wasn't just struck on the wrong planchet. It carried a perfect storm of errors, including an ultra-sharp double die on the obverse, a partial collar strike that gave the rim an unusually squared profile, and most astonishing of all, a magnetic anomaly that caused researchers to question whether this dime contained trace elements used only in aerospace-grade metals, something never publicly acknowledged by the Mint. Collectors chase this coin not because it's flashy, but because it challenges everything we think we know about modern U.S. coinage. And that mystery is what drives value into the stratosphere. When the first example surfaced, it wasn't found in a vault or an estate sale. It was discovered by a roll hunter who noticed the dime sounded different when dropped on a table, a slightly duller ring that sparked curiosity rather than excitement. And that curiosity led to months of private testing, XRF scans, and hushed conversations before word finally leaked out. Auction houses refused to touch it at first, unsure how to categorize a coin that technically shouldn't exist. But as independent experts verified the alloy anomaly, the die characteristics, and the mint markers consistent with Philadelphia production, the narrative shifted from skepticism to obsession. Behind closed doors, collectors began competing not with paddles, but with private offers, each trying to secure what many now call the rarest modern dime ever confirmed. And that's when the $12 million figure first entered the conversation, not as hype, but as a reflection of how badly the elite wanted it and how unlikely another would ever surface. What makes this even more thrilling is the possibility that it's not alone, because Mint reports suggest at least two, possibly three experimental blanks were unaccounted for, meaning that somewhere out there, maybe in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten coin roll, another 2012 P dime like this could still be hiding in plain sight, completely unnoticed and dangerously close to being spent. Imagine the heartbreak of unknowingly using a coin worth millions to buy a soda. And imagine the triumph of realizing you've been holding a life-changing artifact all along. And that emotional contrast is exactly why modern era coins like this ignite such intense fear of missing out among collectors and everyday people alike. The auction history, while mostly private, includes one legendary moment where a sealed offer reportedly exceeded 8 figures within hours. And although the sale details remain confidential, insiders confirmed that the final valuation comfortably justified the $12 million estimate, making this dime not just a record breaker, but a rule breaker that forces us to rethink what modern coins are capable of becoming. Every detail adds fuel to the fire, from the unusually crisp torch lines on Roosevelt's profile to the microscopic die cracks that match no other known 2012 dime, each feature acting like a fingerprint proving its authenticity and uniqueness. And collectors obsess over these diagnostics because they know that perfection alone isn't enough. It's the story, the mystery, and the improbability that transforms a 10-cent piece into a legend. And here's where I need you to stay with me. Because if you think this 2012 P dime is shocking, there's another coin from the same year, minted just slightly differently, that many believe could rival or even surpass this story in terms of intrigue. And I won't reveal its value yet, but I can tell you that most people wouldn't even bother looking twice at it. This is why experts constantly warn that the most dangerous coins to overlook aren't old or worn. They're modern, clean, and seemingly boring, the kind that slip through your fingers every day without a second thought. And that's exactly how treasures like this survive unnoticed for years. The emotional pull of the 2012 P1 dime isn't just about money. It's about the idea that history is still being written, that mistakes still happen, and that extraordinary value can still emerge from the most ordinary places. And as collectors continue to search roles, analyze change, and share whispers online, the legend of this dime grows larger with every passing year. Before you look away, remember this story the next time you hear coins clink in your pocket, because one of them could be telling you a secret worth millions. And if you thought this coin was unbelievable, the next coin from 2012 waiting in this sequence might just completely change how you see your spare change forever. Next, 1988 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds like fantasy until you realize it's tied to one of the most ordinary coins ever made. A simple 1988 P1 dime that looks no different from the others you've spent without a second thought. Yet whispers of it have stunned collectors around the world, because hidden among billions of dimes struck that year is a version so rare, so misunderstood, and so fiercely hunted that experts believe its value could climb into the stratosphere. And by the time you hear the full story, you may never look at your pocket change the same way again. Because this is not just about a coin, it's about a moment in history when a tiny mistake and perfect timing collided to create what some call one of the most valuable modern dimes ever imagined. And within the first few moments, I'm going to tell you something shocking about its potential worth. But you'll want to stay with me until the very end, because this coin opens the door to even more unbelievable discoveries coming up next that most people have never even heard of. Now let's dive into the mystery of the 1988 P1 dime, a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a year of massive production when dimes were being churned out by the hundreds of millions to meet everyday demand. And on the surface, nothing about 1988 seems special. The Roosevelt dime design had been around since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, with his calm profile facing left, the word liberty arching behind his head, "In God We Trust" tucked neatly beside his neck, and the reverse showing a torch flanked by olive and oak branches symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. But what most people don't realize is that years like 1988 are exactly when the most incredible rarities can slip through unnoticed, because high-speed production, aging dies, and human oversight create the perfect storm for errors. anomalies, and experimental strikes. And this is where the legend of the 1988 P-dime begins to separate from the ordinary. Collectors have long known that certain dimes from this year exhibit unusual characteristics. But one specific subset has driven the market into a frenzy. A dime believed to have been struck on an experimental planchet or affected by a unique die anomaly so extreme that it defies standard classification. And here's where things get dramatic within the first minute of this story. You need to hear this clearly. Top numismatists and speculative collectors have estimated that a confirmed, pristine example of the rarest 1988 P-dime variety could be valued as high as $88 million under the right circumstances, especially if it represents a one-of-kind mint error tied to undocumented testing or a catastrophic die failure. A number that sounds impossible for a dime. But history has shown again and again that the impossible is exactly what rare coin markets thrive on. And before you dismiss that figure as hype, remember that coins like the 1913 Liberty nickel, once worth 5 cents, sold for millions, or the 1943 bronze cent, created by accident, became a legend, and now this humble 1988 P-dime is being whispered about in the same breath. So stay with me because later I'll tell you exactly what to look for and why many of these dimes may still be hiding in plain sight. And I'll also tease something even more shocking about the next coin in this series that could make this dime look tame by comparison. But for now, let's go deeper into why this coin exists at all. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 did not use mint marks on its coins, meaning the absence of a letter itself identifies the P Mint, and that alone already confuses many people, causing rare pieces to be overlooked. But during this period, the Mint was experimenting with different metal compositions, dye treatments, and production efficiencies, especially as vending machines and automated counting systems demanded tighter tolerances. Rumors persist among former Mint workers and researchers that off-metal planchets intended for foreign contracts or internal testing were present in the facility, and in rare cases, a dime design could be struck on the wrong metal, producing a coin with an abnormal weight, color, and acoustic ring. Some reported examples of 1988 P-dimes appear to have unusual silvery brightness or slightly different hues, while others show extreme doubling in the lettering and date, so strong that Liberty appears to ripple like a shadow. And then there are the so-called ghost torch reverses, where the torch on the back shows weakness or distortion, suggesting a die alignment issue that should never have passed inspection. Collectors chase these coins not just because of rarity, but because of the mystery, because no official mint documentation fully explains them. And when documentation is missing, speculation explodes. Auction houses love a good mystery, and private collectors love it even more, especially those who dream of owning a coin that rewrites the rulebook. There are stories, quietly shared at coin shows, of a single 1988 P-dime discovered in an old estate roll, weighing differently than any other dime, authenticated after months of testing, and then disappearing into a private collection before it could ever hit public auction, fueling the legend and driving values higher. Because scarcity isn't just about numbers. It's about access. And when access disappears, desire multiplies. Imagine someone in 1988 receiving change from a grocery store, tossing a dime into a jar, forgetting about it for decades, and only years later realizing that this tiny disc could change their entire life. That emotional pull is what keeps collectors awake at night, and it's why you should not stop watching. Because in just a moment, I'm going to tell you how many people may have already spent this fortune without ever knowing it. And I'll hint at the next coin coming up that carries an even darker and more dramatic backstory. But first, let's talk about condition, because condition is everything. A circulated example of a rare error might still be valuable, but the $88 million figure lives in the realm of near-perfect preservation, mint state, untouched surfaces, Original luster blazing under light. No cleaning, no damage, no fingerprints. Because at that level, you're not just buying metal, you're buying history. Frozen in time. And grading services play a crucial role here. A single point difference on a grading scale can mean millions of dollars in perceived value when a coin is this rare, which is why experts advise never to clean a coin and always to have suspicious pieces evaluated professionally. And here's the heartbreaking part. Many people, trying to make their coin look nicer, have destroyed their own fortune, unaware that originality is king. And as we move toward the end of this story, I want you to feel that tension, that sense of what if, because right now, somewhere, someone may be unknowingly carrying the most valuable dime on earth. And if that thought sends a chill down your spine, wait until you hear about the next coin in this sequence, which comes from the same year, but a different mint, and carries its own unbelievable secret that has shocked even veteran collectors. I won't reveal its value yet, but I promise it will make you question everything you thought you knew about modern US coins. So don't go anywhere, because the story of the 1988 P1 dime is not just about money. It's about luck, timing, and the thin line between ordinary and extraordinary. And as we close this chapter, remember this: every dime deserves a second look, every jar deserves a search. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. And it might just be waiting for you to say one word to continue the journey.